Well, first of all, it's an absolute privilege. I'm so glad that you asked me to talk here today to more doctors actually than are at my local surgery. So it's really great to be. That is the best joke. That's the best joke I've got all day. That's all I've got in me. But it truly is a privilege to be here, and I thank you so much for inviting me to talk today on what I think is an exciting subject. And I was looking back through the back catalogue of your talkers or speakers, and there he was, Professor John Adair, of course the first Professor of Leadership. And a little story about Professor Adair is, back in 2014, I knew nothing about leadership, and I got posted to CLM Squadron, Command Leadership and Management, to deliver training to soldiers on command leadership and management. And I thought I'd go to this talk, this Adair person, at Shrivenham, when the talks were at Shrivenham. And I listened to him speak on action-centred leadership and just his talking about leadership. And from that moment, it changed my life, literally changed my life. And I drove immediately back to where I was based in Worthy Down, and I had to write my first ever piece of leadership writing, a point brief to my CO on what Adair had just told me about leadership. So it all started there thanks to Professor John Adair. So to be on the same stage as him is absolutely a privilege to do. But unlike Adair, I'm not going to talk about leadership today per se. I'm going to be talking about followership, but in particular organisational followership, because there are many facets to followership. For example, who we follow in life, sport, relationships, etc., etc. But I'm going to concentrate on organisational followership and not what followers do. I think that that's been spoken about enough, and previous writers and academic papers focus a lot on that. But I'm going to be talking more about the sort of philosophy of followership within an organisation and how we create the flow of followership within the organisation. Well, who am I? Well, Kathy gave me an introduction there. I am in the military. I am Captain Simon Lash, and I am the Station Administrative Officer here at Sandhurst, for those that may not know me. I'm also a Senior Research Fellow with the Centre of Army Leadership, where I've been doing that for a few years now. And I've wrote a few papers with them, a few insights that have been published, and I've actually got one being published this month on Mission Command. But I'm also writing a paper for them at the moment on followership, a casual paper. And that's really what I'm going to talk to you about today. And I want to be absolutely clear with everyone that I am not an academic. I don't hold a degree, I don't hold a master's or anything of that sort. What I do like to do though is read. So my methodology for today has been about reading articles, books, publications, and everything else that I could find on followership and leadership. I've also used my observations and conversations with people that I've had as I've had the privilege to travel around the country as a co-founder of the Coaching, Mentoring and Leadership Development Network within the Staff and Personnel Support Branch. Because for 28 years, people have been my business. And I think that followership aims at the heart of people when we look at it from an organisational perspective. And like I said, what I'm not going to cover today, though, is the role of the follower. That has been done enough. But what I am going to cover today are three main areas. First of all, the flow of followership. How do we create that sort of sense of flow within an organisation to assure that it can flow throughout the whole of the organisation? I'll then talk about the 5 pillars of followership and what we need to create followership, and then how we create followership through a good 3-ring model. I know you all like your 3-ring models, so of course I've satisfied that need. 2 statements I'm going to make before I continue though. Firstly is, followership is not new. There's a general conception that followership is new and it is a new fad. It has been around for centuries, in fact millennia. It was Aristotle that said, "He who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader." And if we look more recently, yes, we can see that from the 80s, 90s, noughties, people like Kelly, Kellerman and Shalif have all been writing about followership. And academic papers can be stretched back to the 60s, and there are academic papers I refer to here that have just been produced recently. So it's not new. Why do I think it's coming to the front now? Well, I think it's because as we move to an environment, particularly within the workplace, whereabouts it's becoming more complex, not just in how we do work, but how people are more complex within the organisations from when they probably were when we used to look at leadership in its totality. If we go back to great man theory and everything from the 1920s, we're not there anymore. Taylorism is finished, particularly within the Western world, and particularly within the UK, where we're predominantly a service sector. So we need to have that as more complex things with regards to organisational leadership and followership that comes out from that, and not being in that sort of linear structure that we have anymore. So that's why it's not new. The second statement is, following and followership is not weakness. There is a conception when I talk to people that by acknowledging the fact that you're a follower, or by acknowledging the fact that followership exists, that you're somehow weakening the structure of the organisation. But I want people to think about that. Think about what following and followership actually means. It means you're giving yourself over to something or someone. It means it's bigger than just you. You're not alone in followership. Yet we're happy to be called in the military a subordinate. We're happy to be called servant leaders. And these words are not as powerful as being a follower, that intrinsic want to follow. So I don't understand why we see it as weakness. Now, whether that's because we are in a male-dominated hierarchical organisation, particularly within the military, that we have to put everything on the leader, but that creates its own problems when we become reliant on the leader. And what I propose is that followership creates codependency, not dependency. It creates cooperation, not isolation, and it creates partnerships, not individualists. And I say that that is the power of followership as opposed to a weakness. So, to get on and harness that power of followership, we have to create it within the organisation. So the first thing that we need to look at is how we get followership to flow, and the flow of followership. And the reason I say we have to have it flow through the organisation is that we tend to look at the leader and follower in a sort of binary approach. There is a leader, there is a follower, and that's how it sits within the organisation. And a leader may have many followers. But with followership, you want it to flow through everyone in the organisation, not just between the leader and follower, but everyone within the organisation, that they follow each other. It's not just a question of following the leader. And what I think is that when we look at this, and we look at this particular sort of leader-follower approach that we kind of have, and this has been acceptable since the sort of noughties, whereabouts I can kind of track this back to. And a lot of literature I read today, and a lot of papers I read, kind of say what I'm saying, but still put leader first. And that's a problem, because when you ask people to identify in one of the roles, because that's what we do, we say you're in either one of the roles. But of course, the Army leadership doctrine tells us that you are constantly in both. You are both a leader and a follower. And the context will decide in the situation in which role you should be. Role. And there's the problem. Because we keep looking at it in a role, we will always tend to, particularly in a hierarchical organisation, and because of what the literature says and what we have been delivering for the last 100 years at least, look at the leader. And that has a problem because we get leader dependency. And there's some great work, actually. I say great work. There's some work coming out of China at the minute from Zheng, Zhou and Zhang on follower efficacy and follower self-efficacy. And there's work, I've seen lots of work on leader self-efficacy and how people see themselves as leaders, but not as followers. And what their work is basically saying, and remember I am talking about China and Asia, so it'd be interesting to see this, how it works over here. But what they found is that when people can identify in the role of follower and understand the importance of the role of being a follower, that they have a more productive workforce and they are more happy in their work as followership is created throughout the organisation. And they looked at 10 different organisations, I believe, and those that had a followership philosophy, what I'm going to come on to now, remember this is China, but when I come on to that, it's about, I think that needs further investigating about, in the Western society, about what that looks like. But there's a problem, because it's leader first, and that doesn't resonate well in my head. So what I've got here is a model. I call it the transference model. Forgive it if you can't kind of understand it. It's what was in my head and I had to get it out, and this was the easiest way. And the way I see it is this, is that in the organisation we have 3 levels. I think these are commonly accepted. We have the strategic, the operational, and the team tactical level of the organisation. When we're at the team tactical end, you are following more people. There are more leaders above you than there are followers underneath you per se. As you move up through the organisation, there are going to be less leaders and you are going to have more followers. Maybe not directly, but there are more followers in the organisation. So if we look at the leader-follower model and we just keep that model going, what happens at the strategic level? So if we've got a leader-follower, 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 what are the leaders following? What are they following at the top of the organisation? What are they following at the bottom, team tactical end of the organisation? So what I say is that as you move up through the organisation, you must transfer. Hopefully, through followership, we get people to transfer at the team tactical end of the organisation. So instead of having a leader-follower approach, I think there's one simple change we make to create a flow of followership. And we have a follower-leader approach to organisations. And what I found when I talk to people about this is the higher up the organisation I go, they go, hate this, don't like it, I'm a leader. I am the leader. Okay, what are you following? Oh, well, I follow the purpose. Oh, so you lead to follow the purpose. And when you look at this now, you tend to see yourself in both roles. And this is where I'd like the psychologists to kind of look at this and go, do you know what, actually, do they, don't they? But I fundamentally believe, it's a psychological trick by saying, oh, now I can see myself in the duality of role. Because followers first. We're placing the follower before the leader. Aristotle said, he who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader. He didn't say it the other way around. Maybe I'm too fixed on that, but I believe in that. I genuinely believe in that. And if we look at this model here by Michel Vondy, I've adapted it. Okay, you might not see it right back at the end. So Michel Vondy, in her paper, Follower-Focused Leadership Relationships, basically starts here at the leader-style behaviours and how they influence on the follower and the follower's perception of the leader. But I always have a problem with that. Because when you look at the leader-follower model and you put that in an organisation, if I'm a general and I have a lieutenant colonel CO, commanding officer, I'm a brigade commander with a commanding officer. What do I want? So from my leadership, I want the colonel to follow me, and then I want them to lead their troops. So I think a hierarchical organisation actually wants a follower-leader model because it needs that to work. Mission command in the military requires that you follow first and then lead for the action. But when I see these models, they never loop round. So where does it sit? So is it at the bottom end of the organisation, at the team tactical, where you've got the leaders and then you've got followers? And when I slot it in, it doesn't quite fit. But if I look at a follower-leader model and I try and slot that in anywhere in the organisation, it works perfectly. But I'm not stupid in the sense that when you first join an organisation, you're not likely to go to be for the purpose of the organisation. You're there for some other need. So you will have the leader-follower model because you're reliant on the leader at that point. And what we want to do is create them into a follower first so that they follow the purpose where we can, or ourselves as people. And I'll come on to that in a minute under the 5 pillars. So it's about what I'm saying as well is that actually our leadership is defined or interacts with our followership. And depending on how we follow, depending how we follow the purpose, depending on how we follow a leader or fellowship within the organisation, impacts actually on how we lead. Because if I'm giving an order by somebody that I don't really follow and I don't believe in the purpose, how well am I actually going to act upon it? It's going to impact on how I lead my team to achieve the task under Adair, of course. So that's how I see it. And so it loops back round to those leadership styles behaviour. And as we move up the organisation, we must follow the purpose. Because what are we leading us at the strategic level of the organisation to? But to do that, we need to create the 5 pillars. And these are the 5 pillars. And the reason I've called them pillars is because organisations tend to have structure. And pillars, as we know, make structure stronger, and it looks prettier on paper. So, 5 pillars of followership. The first one, of course, we all know what it's going to be, purpose. But I've doubled that up. Purpose and people. P2, P squared, whatever you want to call that. Why am I saying that? First of all, when we look at, the follower and the leader, we look at it in this way. But what I want, though, is for people to also follow a purpose. Because otherwise, what am I holding the leader to account for? Because otherwise, I'm just following the leader. I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why we're doing it. But I'm just following them. So I'm following the people, the leader. The leader is included in people. Because what I want is all people to follow within the organisation, not just in that linear binary leader-follower sense. But also think about a pillar. If I pour concrete in a pillar, and just concrete, it's going to be strong, it's going to be okay. But if I put some rebar in it, if I support that with something else, it's going to be stronger. So in an ideal environment under followership, we follow both the purpose and the people within the organisation. There is a flow of followership between the purpose and the people. And it might be that I just follow the people, or it might be I follow the purpose, and I'll come on to that in a moment. So the second one is belief. We have to create belief. And that can be to the purpose and to the people, and like I said, we hope it to be both. And you're probably thinking, how, Si, did you get to these pillars? How did they just conjure themselves? Well, what I did was, when I was reading, I'd start to note down how many times I saw the word belief, how many times I saw the word purpose, trust, loyalty, and commitment. And they came out quite a lot. And so I thought there's got to be something in this. If all these different writers from different parts of leadership, followership and everything else are writing this, not all together, but separately, I need to bring these together. So that's what I did. And then I thought, what is belief? Because no one actually says what belief is. They mention it a lot, they talk about it a lot, but they don't actually say what it is. And I found it difficult to find things on it. So then I turned to the only person I thought I could was the Padre. And thank you, Padre Robbins, came to Sicily with us, who gave me some information on belief. And what I extracted from that, because that is a minefield, by the way, it's very philosophical, isn't it? Yeah, Thingy's box, the cat, Schrodinger's cat or whatever. But when I was talking about, that's where it went. Yeah, that's it. You can imagine what that conversation was like. But when I looked at belief, there was basically, I found 2 types of belief. Evidentialism and proper basic belief. Evidentialism being sort of epistemic in the sense that you need to see that it's true, that the knowledge is there, you've seen the science, and it's proven that it's true. And the proper basic belief, or a Blix belief, is that you can't prove that it's true. I believe it because I believe it to be true, but it's not proven. You can't disprove it or prove it, but I still believe it to be true. It's about understanding where people are, because I may not be able to make somebody believe in the purpose, but I can get them to believe in me as the leader. And I will do that through demonstrating through evidentialism what I do for them, what they can see, what I can prove to them, what knowledge I can give them to believe in me, that I hope that I can then turn that into belief in the purpose. So it doesn't matter which way, and some people, for example, may join the army. And I think most people join the military and the army on a proper basic belief, in that they are joining the army to defend the people of the United Kingdom. I genuinely believe that even today, that that's why they join. But something goes wrong, and I'll come on to sort of commitment in a bit. But you've got to maintain it, because if you can degrade it, if we get the belief wrong and don't keep people believing in that, or we erode it because we don't create followership within the organisation, they can lose touch with the purpose. Trust. I'm not going to harp on about trust, because I think we can all agree that trust is important in everything that we do within an organisation. But I think it's, and I put it in the centre, because it's that centre pillar, and if you take the centre out, it weakens the structure. And I think we all know that trust plays an important part in how we interact with each other, and particularly how I talk about in the third part of this, how we create this. So it's about creating trust within the organisation. You know, Simon Sinek says, reference trust, you know, with the SEAL team, you know, US Navy SEALs, they would take someone with trust over someone with high performance, because that's what they need in the team, albeit they are already a high-performing team in a high-performing organisation. But you can kind of see where they're going with that. Like him or loathe him, Patrick Lencioni's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I know there's controversy around his academic prowess and his writing, but I can get behind the absence of trust as being the first dysfunction of a team. I see it at work all the time. So trust is really important. So we've got purpose and leaders and people. We've got belief. We've created trust. Next comes loyalty. Create those three, you are likely to create loyalty within the organisation. Remember, I'm talking about organisational followership now. We are in a very transient workforce at the moment. I think that we are somewhat very task focused, and we have forgot the art of followership, and we have forgot, and I think a lot of things people are writing at the moment, because followership at the end of the day just makes people feel valued. That's what it's about. Belonging. That's the army strapline. Belonging. Create this, you create a sense of belonging, is my belief. So we want people to remain loyal. We want people to be not blindly loyal, but just loyal to the organisation, loyal to the people within the organisation, so that we remain committed and that we create commitment. Commitment to the organisation, commitment to the leader, because that's what creates good followership, because all we ever talk about is bad followership. But commitment gives you that area to stay with an organisation, or that feeling to stay with an organisation. And by creating the other four that sits on top of it, by creating them, you are likely to create people that are more committed to achieving the task, are more likely to drive and commit themselves to the task when it gets hard. And I do have to caveat this in when you say that this will happen in war for the army. This tends to happen because the purpose is so great that everybody can get behind it, and followership just kind of works. Because there is belief in the purpose, trust in each other, loyalty to the purpose and the people, and commitment to the people and the purpose. So this all just makes sense to me. And if you go to the statement that was at the front, the quote, The story is that in 1962, Kennedy visited the Space Center, and he had a bunch of reporters with him, and he was walking through the corridors, and he come across an individual and said, "What do you do here?" And he replied, "I helped put man on the moon." It turns out his job was the janitor. And so, what did he have? He displayed all of these because the purpose was so great that he had absolute belief in the purpose, trust in the purpose, trust in himself for doing what he does, loyalty to his role, to the organisation, and he was very committed. So by creating those, you create the feeling of followership. It just becomes. But to do that, but what happens when we've got the pillars, as I said they were pillars, and you are not balanced. So like everything in life, you have to be balanced in these. Because if you have too much belief in the purpose or the person, then you are likely to increase trust, loyalty, commitment and make you more obsessed, aren't you? Again, if we take away, and if the vice versa, if you don't have enough belief, you're not likely to create trust, loyalty and commitment. And then to take it a step further, what happens if we take something away? So let's say we have trust, but we are loyal and committed. That blows my mind. It's like, right, okay, what fills that void? What's filling that void? Let's say we took away belief and trust, but you're still loyal and committed. What fills the void? I could tell you what I think fills the void. Fear or money. Extrinsic motivators. So you're not creating followership, you're creating obedience. So if you're creating loyalty and commitment that's based upon extrinsic motivators, and it's not intrinsic that we should be creating, and you remove one of them, if there's no trust but I'm being loyal to you, I'd be wary about why. What's filling that void? And again, I'd like to do more work with people on that to explore what does fill the void when you take one away, but you are displaying loyalty and commitment. But like I said, I would say it's money or it's fear. I know that sounds a bit harsh. I have no evidence to support that. It's just me thinking what I've read and what I see, that something's filling the void and it's probably not a good thing. But like I say, everybody's got their own motivators. So we need to try and build it. Even if it's there originally, because people will, remember what I said, they go to work usually for their own means, Maslow's hierarchy and all that. But what about, but we can still create the followership even though they've got their own agenda or purpose that they're following. So now that we've done that, we need the actions to do it. Don't worry, I'm nearly finished, all right? We need to create the actions to do it. And I say follower-centered leadership. This, you can't really see that properly on there. Apologies for that, it looks better. But the Army has action-centered leadership. I've been 28 years in the Army. So the Army leadership is what I know and what I think I'm good at understanding. And that's based on Adair's action-centered leadership that came out in 1967, 69, around there. Came out in the 60s. We've got an Adair practitioner in the room. Which was achieve the task, build and maintain the team, and develop individuals. I spoke about role earlier. What's interesting, when Adair talks about this, and he says the role of the leader, he doesn't say the role of the leader. He says his interpretation of the role of a leader is expectation. So actually, it's not what is the role of the leader, it's what is expected of the leader, which is to achieve the task, build and maintain the team, develop individuals. Well, that's me leader dependent now, isn't it? I'm leader dependent because what I want in followership is people to own that. That's what I want, people to own those things. I don't want the leader to tell me to do that. I want to do that. So what we need to do is say, how do we generate that? with a nice simple model that looks very similar to this, that supports this, because this is the army model, and I'm talking to the military. How do we support this? Well, we have to look through it and look on the flip side. So when we flip it over and we look at it from a follower perspective, or how we generate followers, because we have to, unless someone's already come in follower-centered first, but we may need to get them to follow us as the leader, because they may follow the purpose, is that we need vision, connect, and empower. And I'll elaborate them on these. So with regards vision, I may not be able to get you to understand or see the purpose of the organisation. But as a leader, because I still believe that leadership is absolutely required, I still need to create some form of vision for you. And I think we sometimes get mission, purpose, and everything else mixed up. And what's actually a mission, we say, is purpose and everything else. But we need to give it, if we're going to give anything, give something meaning to the people. What does it mean to them? Why? Good old Simon Sinek again. You know, why are they doing what they're doing? We know we've got to achieve the task, so if we've got to flip it round, well, why are they achieving the task? We have to give them the vision, all right? And then again, behaviours. How are we going to do that? What's the behaviours of the organisation, which we kind of have with values and standards, but there's no reason why leaders with their teams can't do that. And then we need to connect. And I really, I think, I have this conversation all the time, is that, Adair talks about the balls being malleable. Some will grow, some will shrink, depending on the context and the situation and everything else. But you must try and give, where possible, equal time on energy and effort to all three. But what I'm seeing is a loss of connection. For some reason, hierarchical organisations, we feel we can't connect with people. We feel we have to have a distance. And that's hard then to create the pillars of followership, because you want them to trust you and you want them to be loyal to you. But we need to connect with people, and we need to connect with all people together within your team, not just those that you lead. And then if you are a leader of teams, you need to connect your team somehow. And one way to do that is try to connect them to the purpose and the vision, okay? And when I write indirectly or directly, if I am, like I said at the team tactical end of the organisation, it's going to be hard for me to get someone to see the very top. I want them to, and I really want them to. But what I need to do is create it within my team that links in, because I follow that purpose as the leader. Because if I'm not a leader at the team tactical end, leading at that level, and I don't follow the purpose above me, what am I leading towards? Hence, follow first. And I need to try and connect people with that vision. So connect with people on a personal level, which is easy. Just talk to them. That's all it is. Pay interest. They may not have the same hobbies as you, but listen to what they've got to say. It's quite easy to connect with people. Let's get it done. That's what I say. But then try and connect them to the purpose. And empower. Now, I struggled with this word because, first of all, I had develop there. I had empower, I changed it for develop, and I've gone back to empower. Why? Because we've ruined the word. We've ruined the word with semantic stretch, haven't we? We've kind of got the word, used it to fit everything. Oh, I empower you, I empower you. I'm going to create a new way of doing a training timetable and call that empowerment. Hang on, how have you empowered me? So we've given it some wrong words. We've given the wrong context to empowerment, which has caused some problems. But I said, do you know what? I'm bringing it back because it's the right word to use. Because when we empower people and genuinely empower them through things like delegation, but then when we delegate, we give them autonomy of time, task, team, and technique. Good old Daniel Pink. Okay, that's not mine. But when we give them autonomy of those, and we show them that we're delegating to them, and we make them accountable, we're going to grow trust. It shows that we trust them. So by doing these, vision, connect, develop, what I'm doing is I'm creating the 5 pillars. So if you take nothing away today, and I say this to, everywhere I go, if you take nothing away, forget about all the philosophy, forget about everything else, forget about the word followership, not interested. I don't give 2 hoots. What I say, if you take away anything, and I say this to leaders, do this, vision, connect, develop, because you will unknowingly create followers, and you'll create followership within the organisation, unknowingly, or, if you want to be technical, what I call followership, and what I define as followership within an organisation. I just think it will create people that will feel valued. And I think that that's very important if we want to put it into bare basics. And you can sit and think about, why did you leave a job? Why did you leave someone? Why do you do what you do? Why do you follow? And I think the pillars will be there. At least a few of them will be there, because you took one away and that probably made you walk away. Just saying. So, what we need to do then is provide a flow of followership within an organisation. And the way that we can do that is by working on and building the 5 pillars around the structure. But we need to do that by changing the way that we think about followership and what it actually means. And we need to do that in order to create followers and followership. And to do that, I think that we need something within our organisation, within the military, like follower-centred leadership, not to overtake or replace action-centred leadership, but to work in unison with it, because we still do have to achieve the task, we have to build and maintain the team, and we have to develop individuals. So follower-centred leadership, though, provides a framework in order to do that. So that's me, Captain Silash, finishing that talk. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think it's giving you, I hope, some thought to think about, and I would like to invite you for any questions that you may have.